Welcome to the Sports Card Lessons Podcast. I'm your host, Big Ken. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on a streaming service, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. You'll be notified whenever I drop any new content. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Happy Monday. This is coming a little later than usual for a Monday release, but I wanted to take my time because I had a lot I wanted to go over. I didn't want to rush the episode out. So a little later, but hopefully a great episode. Um, the Fenway Card Show at Fenway Park. First off, I have to say it's been a while, and I think I said this on the last episode after the Stanford show, um, that I have to stand all day. You know, the shows are getting busier again, and especially a 2-day show, standing at a 2-day show. I always know how busy the show is by the way I feel Sunday night when I get home. So luckily enough for this show, my stepdaughter lived right up the street from Fenway Park, so I was able to stay there overnight and not have to. I mean, the rooms they're gracious enough to negotiate rooms up there, but you're staying in Boston. There's two things that aren't cheap. One is parking, and the other is a hotel room. I mean, a lot of people I know stayed outside, went and found hotels outside the city, which was fine too. But I didn't need to, so I didn't need to drive back and forth. So I was happy to have a place to stay. But getting home last night, I could tell you I was feeling it. It was one of those 2-day shows. It was constant traffic all day. I was standing all day, and I got home and finally sat down and relaxed. Whew, I was feeling it. So let's jump into the show. First, I have to say I love these destination shows. Fenway Park, there was Gillette Stadium back in the fall. And I'm hoping around the country other people will catch on because this is fun. And I think it brings more people, even people who may not necessarily be in the hobby. It brings them, and a lot of people come. I've talked to people this weekend and said, look, I don't do anything with cards, but my friend here was coming here. I'd never been here. I wanted to see the place. So, I came here, and, when you show up where the card show is like underneath the bleachers, and kind of where you would go in if you're at a game, right? And you'd come down out of the bleachers to go underneath to use the bathrooms or buy some food or whatever. That whole walking area, that's where we're all set up. That's where the tables are all set up. So not only do you get to see that area, but you have the ramps that are going right out to the field. You could just walk out. I mean, there's nothing going on in the field, but you could certainly just go out and check it out. So that's really cool. And I have to say, I'm not a baseball fan by any means. I've never been to a professional baseball game. I think I've watched some World Series games on TV. But where I had to park down and around the corner in the parking lot and come walking back and just seeing the history, like just walking by, like where the ticket booths, it's the old style ticket booths, where you're getting your tickets. And it's like almost one of those, if you're watching a TV show and somebody's in modern day and all of a sudden it kind of flashes back to like 1920s or 30s or 40s. You almost get that, that kind of flashback as you're walking, there, and you're seeing all this. So, I mean, it's just kind of cool. It's just some of the things that you would see there that you really wouldn't think about. So if I wasn't going there for a card show, or there was really I would have no reason. If somebody said, you want to go look at this place, I'd be like, I'm probably all set. But now that I'm there and I saw it, I'm like, wow, there was a lot of history here in and around this stadium. So it was really cool. It's my second year doing this show, so I'm happy to know the show. I know what to expect. I knew where to go. I know where to park. I knew where to park from last year to bring my stuff in. And, it was just being there once the year before is just so helpful. And then able to help other people who was their first time. We're kind of standing out there like, where do we park? Where do we go in? What do we do? And, just trying to be as helpful as possible too. And even know my setup where my table was last year, even though I was 15 feet away and on the opposite in the same booth, just down on one side, on the other. Man, it made all the difference in the world where I was. Last year, I had this big pillar behind me. I only had a few feet of space between the pillar and my table. This year, I was set up on an end, and being on an end at any show is like a home run. No pun intended at a baseball field, right? But it's definitely a home run. It's very helpful. If you want to advertise your brand, I have nice stuff to advertise, so I could hang them out on the table, and really just to get your cards out there and display your cards, to put them out there. Being on the end, you're the first. They're seeing you first, and especially if people want to. Um, if they're selling their cards, right? I mean, they've had to come a long way, and I'll get into the buying of cards, but they're going to come up to you first, and if they see your sign, hey, you're buying, right? They're going to stop at you first, and then they're going to hit everybody on your row. So you kind of, hopefully, you're going to get the first look of what's left by the time people get to you there. So being on the end is a huge deal. And I'll take that any day. Just like last year, it was a rainy weekend, but thankfully there wasn't as much rain as last year. So last year was like pouring rain, and I only did one day last year. I didn't do 2 days. I just did the one day last year. But Saturday it was pouring rain, and the water was starting to run in. There was water in on the floor. You really couldn't put anything on the floor. Over on the side, kind of where we were at was pretty good. But on the wall areas, there was water coming in, but it didn't rain like that this weekend. There was no water coming in. And if you look at the layout of the show, just to give you a better idea, there's like a center, a left, and a right. So when you walk in, where you walk in would be the center, and the center and the right generally, when the people first came in, the flow. So when you came into the show, you ended up in the center, but you were really moving towards a right direction. So I know everybody that came into the show, before they ever got down to the left where we were, they were going through the other areas, the center and the right. And it was just a natural flow. I mean, you could just tell by the way it was set up. On the left, we were further away, and it felt like we were not in a prime location. And I felt that same way last year, but there was so much traffic last year. Who was to complain, right? Throughout the show, people were coming down that had already been through the center and the right, and they talked about being really cold, really wet, really windy up that other side. Even though it was a little chilly on our end, it certainly wasn't freezing. We weren't getting wet, and the wind was, I mean, you'd feel a little breeze now and then, but there really wasn't much wind. But then you started seeing people coming down later in the day wearing hats and their jackets and their hoods pulled up, like they were just coming in from outside of the cold, or like a really cold and rainy day. And they're like, oh man, it's so much nicer on this end. And I started to think, all right, so not so bad, right? Not so bad, because I didn't even think to bring a jacket in with me on Saturday. I mean, it was supposed to be in the 60s, felt almost like going to be 70. Why would I need a jacket, right? But by late in the day Saturday, I was like, you know what, I'm getting a little cold here. I think tomorrow I may dress a little warmer. And especially if you're going to be standing right in one place for 2 days. I mean, that's where you're going to feel it, even if it's not that cold. But if you're standing there for 2 days, eventually it's going to catch up with you. So at the end of the day, I think we had the better side, even though the how we're being situated, we shouldn't have had the better side. I think we definitely had the better side this time. On Sunday morning, I know I got there a little early. There was talk about some free parking out in front, but there was like I said earlier, there's parking's at a premium anywhere. So you know what, when free parking opens up on Sunday, people are coming from all over to park their car, right? Park their car in there. But Sunday morning I got there, it's fine. They gave us parking lots which were within walking distance, so that worked out just fine. I got there a little early. I went and I wanted to walk the right side. I knew some people were there that I wanted to see, but I was there too early. Some of them weren't even there to set up yet. But I got to do a little shopping, got to walk around, and I could see over there Sunday morning, like the wind was blowing the mist of the rain in, and it was getting in on the people, on the cases, the boxes, and they said, "Is it as bad the other side?" I'm like, "No, not even close. Like there's no way the wind was going to be blowing any rain or mist or anything in on us." So again, happy to be on the other side. The traffic on both days was excellent. I mean, it started off, I think both days, it started at 9 o'clock, and probably between 9 and 10 was spotty. But then after that, I mean, it just got busy, and it just stayed busy all day. Um, for me, on my table, I had 3 showcases. So usually I talk about all these discount boxes and 1 showcase. So I went the opposite this time. I went with 3 showcases. 1 showcase, I had my mid to high end cards anywhere from 200 to 6,000, right? In the first case. Second case, I had low end cards, $15 to say $175. And third case was my pop culture stuff, anywhere from $40 to $500 in that case. And 1 discount box. I brought 1 box, basketball only. I recently ripped some Select and Prism basketball blasters. Uh, you know, not that I know basketball, right? And not for any other reason that I was going out, trying to find the football optic stuff, but I would come across these, I would take a picture, I would send it over to my guy Bill from Bill and Billy Sports Cards, and he does a lot of wax, and I say, what's up with these? And sometimes he says, this stuff's crap. Sometimes he says, yeah, it's a good rip. You'll find if you can pull some like Wemby cards or something like that out of. So I found some stuff reasonably priced. I bought it. I ripped it. A lot of that stuff were in those boxes. So that is the excuse why I had basketball only in a singles box. And last year I brought all a bunch of boxes. I football and things like that. But being wet, being rainy and damp last year, a lot of the boxes got damp, and I just didn't want to deal with that this year. So I wanted to have more showcase stuff. And even in the showcase, even in my mid showcase in the middle, I had a lot of like singles football stuff that were probably 15 to 20 or $25 cards, that would have normally been in like a singles box. I pulled them out, dropped them in, and they sold well in there, as well as some basketball singles too, some Wemby rookies and things like that. But I just didn't want to deal with boxes getting damp or even wet this year. The show itself on Saturday, I had a little deja vu, and I say that I'm trying to think back, but I think like if I really had to pinpoint the last time I was at a show where just so many people were selling, it was the National in Atlantic City, and it just seemed like every person that walked up to the card walked up to the table. It was what they weren't even looking in their case. They were just saying, "Are you buying?" and handing me their cases. So this is kind of how the day started out, where people were just coming and selling and selling. And I know I talked to a few other dealers, and late in the day on Saturday is like, God, if I hear it, and one person say, "You buying?" We all talk about we had trouble buying, and now all of a sudden we're overwhelmed, with people wanting to sell their cards to us, and versus wanting to buy out of our cases, right? So, for most, it was definitely a good buying show if you were buying and what you were buying. Because a lot of people were selling. A lot of it was low end stuff, patch cards, ungraded, things like that. I've seen so many boxes, so many Zion cases open up with just rows and rows of singles in there. They just kind of pulling through. And for me, I don't want to say I've been burned, but most of those cards that you're pulling out of there that are decent cards, they've already either been graded or somebody's already looked at them and they're not graded. So if you're buying them, you're reselling them as singles, and it's just kind of not the lane that I'm in right now. So a lot of that wasn't for me. The stuff that I did find, I was really picky about what I was going to be buying. because I just wanted super liquid cards. So what I was buying, I wanted to pull out price, drop in my case, and hoping to resell. And I did. I resold most of what I bought. So I was pretty happy on that end, saying I was buying, I knew what people were buying. I was able to, to get my hands on liquid cards and just turn them over. Now, I'm not making a fortune on it, but it's putting them in my case, and it's bringing people to say, "Oh yeah, that's the card I'm looking for," and "Oh yeah, that's a great deal. Like I'm willing to buy that card right away." Um, a lot of great cards came to my table that I couldn't get deals done, that we just couldn't agree on a price. But it was okay. It was one of those shows that it was okay. We agreed to disagree, right? I mean, there was a lot of people who were like, "Hey, I appreciate you showing me your cards. On the other end, I appreciate you looking. Sorry we couldn't come to a deal." Like it was, it was a good day. It was a good day with good communication, or I should say a good show with good communication. Because a lot of people, they came, and some people had prices on their cards, and you'd pull it out and they'd say, "Yeah, I mean, this is what I want to get for that card." And they're at 90 or 95%. And that's fine, but that's not for me. That's what I could maybe sell this card for. So I can't buy it and hope to break even on the card. So it was one of those shows, like I said, we agreed to disagree and moved along. I mean, there's a buyer for every card out there, right? I'm just looking for cards you know, that liquid cards that I can quickly turn over. I don't want to get stuck. I'm getting better and better every year this year. Knowing what the market is right now, I know what people are looking for out there. And I know when I open up a case and I'll see a card, like, we're pretty far from those front doors, right? So if somebody shows up and they open up, and all of a sudden, and would even smile, right? Like I always say, "You buying?" Yeah. I open up, and all of a sudden I'm seeing some nice, PSA 10, like a Herbert or a Burrow, like a rookie, something like that. I know right away, like, I'm sure 100 people or 50 people have already seen this card before it's gotten to me. And the reason why they haven't sold it yet is because they probably want top dollar for it. And I'll pull the cards out, and I'll say right away to them, I say, "I know I'm not the first person to pull this out. Like, are you firm? Like, why haven't all the other people you showed these cards to bought them?" Right? Are you over? Are you at 90%, 100%? Because I don't want to go through looking up comps and waste either of our time, right? To try to get a deal done if that's not what it is, right? So a lot of the cards, what kind of cards were I buying? Probably buying those $50 to $100 cards, $125 cards that maybe some people have passed over. Maybe people did not get them. Maybe some people just came in and walked in. I'm starting to find out today that people, if you don't have a sign up say you're buying, like, people will just walk right by you. It used to be everybody, they'd come to every table, you buying, you buying, you buying. But now it's like you really need to, for some people, they need to see a sign before, you know, and without a sign, I could see somebody walk up to my table, right, and then go right to the table next door that's got a buying sign, and then say, "Oh, here, this is what I'm selling." And then you're like, "Oh man, I just missed out on that," right? So, here's a little tip: you're setting up, whatever you put out there, put something out there that just says you're buying. So if you are buying, if you're looking to go through people's cases and buy, because is definitely a benefit at the show. And not everybody's selling their cards, right? Not everybody. I mean, people, and I said to some people, I'm like, honestly, if you want to sell at that price, you should have bought a table, because you probably would have sold those cards at that price. But I can't buy those cards at that price, because I'm in a break. I'm hoping to break even if I do. But if we want to make a deal on a number of these cards, we can get something done. And sometimes they did. Sometimes we got a little deal done that it worked out well. But again, just buying liquid cards that I can resell. I didn't want to take the cards home with me. The cards I'm taking home with me are the cards I'm going out to shop for, unless something really good had slipped through all those other tables and made it to me down on my end. I could say the most popular cards in my case this weekend were my two Kabooms, my CJ Stroud Kaboom PSA 9, and the Jalen Hurts rookie Kaboom PSA 10. I had them priced high, and I told everyone I was firm on the prices. I'm high and I'm firm, just so people knew. I didn't want to waste anyone else's time. And almost every person that came up to my table started to take a picture of the Stroud, most of the Stroud Kaboom. I mean, they were all over everybody, and it was front and center in my case. And I tell them right away, like I said, look, I'm high and I'm firm on the card. That's why it's in my case. Just didn't want, and I wanted to be honest, I didn't want to waste anybody's time. Obviously the Hurts, the Kaboom, the rookie Kaboom, it was probably one of the more expensive cards in my cases. So that Hurts wasn't for everybody in there. It would be more of certain people would be interested in that card. And then, I mean, that card's got a little bit of history too. There's a reason it's only a pop 8 that it had. Most of those cards came with a print line in them, so they wouldn't gem. So there's very few that gemmed of those cards. So the card's a little bit more rare too, right? A lot of people ask, hey, are you trading? Can I trade into those? Yeah, as fine as you've got, as long as you got some good liquid cards, I'm willing to do 50-50 on that. But you have to come up with 50%, cash on that card. I can't do an all card trade on that. But late in the day on Saturday, I had people coming up, that had been already came and look at the cards and said, oh, can you do any better on that? No, I'm firm on the price that I had on it. So like on the Stroud Kaboom, which was the most popular, people were coming and pulling out like 2,000 or 2,100, shaking the money, cash, 2,100 cash, I'm sorry. I'm not selling. And you know what? They were strong offers. I know they were strong offers, and people are gonna say, "Oh, you were crazy. Why didn't you take it?" Right? Because the last two selling on eBay sold in the 1900s, right? And two of them that were between 1900 and 2000, the very last two were relisted or being relisted on eBay. So the 2000 and the 2100, they were strong offers on the card. The difference for me is I knew what I was into the card for, and I wasn't going to take a loss on it because the price dropped. And there were very few of those cards in the room, the Stroud Kaboom. And I knew that because people kept coming back to my table. Right. I really didn't get to look at cases up the other end. I knew on our end, I knew there was an SGC 10 that ended up selling on Saturday for about $3,400, I think. So I knew by the way people kept coming back to the table and try to negotiate. Either A, it was in the room, but they were higher priced than I was or doing the same thing I was, or B, it just wasn't in the room. They just couldn't find the card, but that's what they were looking for. And I had a number of people try to get creative to work out deals, but it just wasn't working out for me. And on Sunday, someone who had come a couple times and looked at the card and really liked the card, looked at it twice, came back 30 minutes before the show ended and said, I'll pay your price. I just want this card. So I was glad. I was glad that, I was able to, stay strong on the card and not take a loss. It was no great victory for me by any means to sell this card over comps because I practically broke even on this card. I bought the card raw. I graded the card and when I sent the card off for grading, the raw and the PSA 9 was selling at $2,500, and by the time it comes back, it's what always happens, right? By the time it comes back, it's $1,900 now. But I was willing on that card to take my chance that the price would rebound in June or July, that I wouldn't end up, there's no reason I should have taken a loss on that card, and I didn't. And I mentioned this at the Stanford show, and I'll say it again. These kabooms in downtowns, they are all the rage. It is what everyone is looking for. That's what everybody wants. They're coming and they see that card in your case and they see it in other people's cases. And that's really, I mean, the industry has us programmed, right? These are case hits. I mean, this is what we're hoping for and we're looking for, and we're in breaks and we're ripping boxes. I mean, this is what we want, right? I mean, I've been in recently, I've been in optic football breaks, right? And I've sat through 130 blasters in different breaks being ripped open. 130 blasters, right? So you would think I think there's 20 per case, right? So that's like 6 cases, right? You would think I'm going to see 6 case hits. No, I've seen 2 Jerry Rice downtowns. It's 2 of the same downtown cards, both Jerry Rice, um, and 2 mysticals, right? So and those are 4 case hits in all those 130 boxes that I watched opened up. And the whole time you're watching it, people's like, "Oh, downtown's coming. Everyone's chasing a downtown. It's all they want is the downtown." So the industry has us programmed, right? This is what we want. And I'm gonna say I think, but I'm pretty sure I know that people are willing to pay over on these cards versus any other card they know that's out there. People, of players that they're willing to overpay on these kabooms and these downtowns. Um, I bought the Hertz kaboom at the Stanford show, cash and trade from my guy Hank at Hank Sports Cards. Talked about that on the episode. And a number of people at that show who looked at that card before I ever saw that card, who didn't pull the trigger on it and knew I did, they said, "Nah, I don't know what you paid, but I'm sure you overpaid." The current comp was showing at $4,500 on that card, and they kept saying, "Oh, that card's not worth more than $3,000." I mean, everybody had an idea of what that card was worth, right? I was the one that was willing to go over 3,000 to acquire the card. Nowhere near the 4,500, not, was was just over the 3,000 mark on that card that I was able to get that for in cash and trade. Um, but and I talked about this, knowing everybody's chasing the kabooms in the downtowns. I was happy to take a chance on that card. I was able to get out of a card that wasn't selling for me, right? And make a deal, for a card under comps of a type of card that I know people are willing to pay over comps for. And in the last hour of this show on Sunday, um, I made a big deal and I moved that card for over comps, right? And I had another card. I had a Lamar Jackson Contenders rookie auto that I picked up in Atlanta at Culture Collision. I moved both of those cards for over comps, just having my price on them, saying, "Look, I'm firm on that. It's okay." It's and people understood. They understood it's before the football rush, right? And they understood where I was at on those cards. But at the end of the day, by the end of that show, people were happy to pay those prices. And in both deals, I was able to acquire cash and liquid cards on top of that. So shout out to those people who, have been telling me, bring all your cards to the show, put your price on it and be firm on it. And I didn't want to because I hated having those conversations about I'm over, or you're high on this, or that the last sale is this. But I figured out a way just to cut people off right at the beginning. Like I could tell as soon as people were starting to take pictures of those cars, just immediately communicate with them saying, I'm high on those cards and I'm firm. I can't be at comp or below comp on that. I'm over comps and I'm firm on that. And for what it is, that's where I'm at. And just being able to communicate out that, I just figured out a way to make it work for me. It took a little while, but people were appreciative of that and had good conversation. Like, "Oh yeah, I bet you are, man. That's just a good card." And where do you need to be on it? And I felt it was probably, I don't think, I don't know. Should I say I'm not surprised I sold those cards late in the day on Sunday? I think it was getting to the end of the show and people had been looking for like the Stroud Kaboom or just another big type of Kaboom. There was another guy that was selling who wasn't too far from me, who I made a deal with for some other cars, but he had a whole case full of Kabooms on Saturday. Like I saw him setting up and I was like, oh my God, he had golds and everything in there. And by Sunday, I walked back there and he was wiped out. He's like, it's unbelievable that people just came to buy these cards. So, I mean, I know these are what what people are looking for. And it's crazy how much they're willing to spend on these cards. But again, I think we're just programmed to think that those are better than any other card because they're the case hit, right? And the same cards, I felt I was able to acquire at a good deal. Like, that Stroud, I watched it get pulled. I bought the card. When I really looked at the card, I could see there was one little tiny spot on it, and I was hoping. I sent it in. I was hoping that it could gem because the rest of the card looked perfect, and it didn't. It came back a 9, but that was okay. Um, able to get out of that. Happy to get out of that. For not, for breaking even. But the other cards, right? Those other 2 cards that I moved late in the day for over comps, super excited to move those cards because I sold these cards at a price. The Lamar and the Hertz, I sold them at a price that I felt were going to be the height of the market in the next 2 months. I mean, if they go over that, then good for them for making that purchase and being able to foresee that and make money on top of that. Only time will tell. I mean, only time will tell. Good for them. But I think it was just a super smart decision for me to get out of these big cards at a price that I may have been lucky to get out of, get for these cards, come late June, early July. So just super excited to move those cards. Some of the cards I picked up in the deal, and I don't have to go through the deals. I'm just going to show you these cards. And if you're on YouTube, you'll see the cards. 2022 Brock Purdy Stars, PSA 10. And again, I was only willing to take liquid cards. I wasn't I mean, that's what I'm looking for. That's what I was looking for. And these were the deals I was ended up getting. Super excited about these 2. 2020 Optic Justin Herbert Hollow, PSA 10. 2020 Optic Joe Burrow Hollow, PSA 10. And 2020 Contenders Jordan Love Rookie Ticket Auto, PSA 10, Auto 10. So yeah, super excited to have these cards. And if you do cash and trade, you end up some of these cards you're into them so good that you're going to move them, make somebody else happy, and still profit on the cards, which is to me the best way to be into a card. Saturday at the show is just a day of selling. I sold a lot of low end stuff, bunch of PSA 9 stuff, all this stuff. I'm getting back from PSA. I had 52 cards come back right before the show. And of course, I pulled all the 10s out, put them aside, and I took all the 9s and just threw them in the case. At this point, I had so many 9s, it doesn't matter. Like maybe if I held them to the next show or the show after. But at this point, I'm like, you know what? I got these grading bills coming in. I still off this 9 stuff to pay off the grading bill. I ended up I sold most of the stuff I sold on Saturday. I ended up just taking the money to go shopping instead. I walked the floor late on Saturday. There was one dealer who had, and I talked about it, had all those Kabooms and downtowns. and I saw that he had a Will Levis Silver Prism and a Downtown PSA 10, and I'll hold those up now. Silver, here's the Downtown PSA 10. So, I just looked at the comps, figured out what I was willing to pay per card that would make sense. And I do this a lot. This is the story I tell you because I got this deal done. But I did this at a number of tables, and people are like, "Nah, I can't go that low." I'm like, "Fine. All right. Again, we can agree to disagree." Right. On these ones, I looked up the recent comps, saw what I was willing to pay. I said, "Hey, what can you do on this one?" He gave me a price, which was basically exactly what I was thinking in my mind, what I could pay on it, what I worked out my calculations, almost identical with the Downtown as well. And I said, "Look, if I took them both," I said, "Can you do any better?" He said, "Yeah, I can do this." And now I'm under what I was willing to pay. Easy deal. I purchased both. I mean, knowing, first of all, the Downtown is liquid. I don't think it matters who it is, right? But it's still knowing that Downtown is going to be really liquid. And myself, probably the prospector, in me, but I'm also, I think, you know, there's a little jump in store for Will Levis between now and the National. I'm surprised that it hasn't happened already. Um, So I'm happy. And you know what? And I say that in two ways. Not because he's done anything that says, "Oh, gee, this guy is gonna, you know, be great." But I think two reasons. One, I think he's still very affordable, right? So people who go and start looking and maybe want to own a Downtown, they're looking at the Richardson and the Stroud, and they're looking around. I mean, now people are like, well, maybe I'll buy the Will Levis. I mean, I could go with a Hendon Hooker or something like that, but he's a starting quarterback, right? He's got the starting position. And I think a lot of different variables are going to come into play that may boost up his just being affordable, right? And B, just being in a good situation in Tennessee that, you know, kind of like Desmond Ritter last year, kind of like my thoughts on Desmond Ritter last year. I was willing to buy it. I moved them all. I did very well with them. And it didn't matter because I was moving them before the season really started. Right. And I think, again, here's a guy who's in a really good situation to be successful. So hopefully people will see that. Hopefully it will create hype, and hopefully there'll be some profit made on these cards. Another pickup I had was a Sunday morning walking around, and a card that I had been looking for on eBay. I bought some of these boxes. I opened them up. I did very well, but I didn't get the Trinity Rodman hometown card. And I thought, you know what? I'm not going to buy anymore. I'll just buy the card instead. I was walking around. I found the card. I was super excited, and it looks very gradable. I'll hold that up. Trinity Rodman hometown card. It's numbered to 199. And it came from the Parkside, the women's national team recap from last year. So it was the recap set, and happy to get that. I bought, I think I had opened 11 boxes of it, and I did very well. And that was the only card out of all that. I mean, obviously didn't get any 101s or anything like that, but that was the only other card I was looking for in that set that I didn't get out of those boxes. And I was super excited to find it at the show. I talked about Caitlin Clark, how for a period I stopped buying her cards to resell because I just felt that the market was going to kind of drop on her. But people were still asking to buy. So when I was at Stanford, I was running around, I was buying up the cards, I was reselling them there. So after Stanford, I said, you know what? Let me buy some more cards, which I did. I brought them to this show, and this was the first show I went to that I actually left with Caitlin Clark cards, that I didn't sell out of those cards. So I'm thinking, here's the slowdown now that I was expecting a few weeks ago. that's hitting now. And I know the season just started and a couple games in, and there's a lot of talk, one way or another. But you know what? It happens to every rookie, right? There's some growing pains, there's some adjustments, in a team, and you have to remember too, she was the first round pick for a reason because the team was last place last year, right? So, she's part of the rebuilding of this team. So they're not going to go out and win every game, but we'll see what happens. There was still a lot of excitement over her. People still looking at the cards and coming right up and pointing them out, but nobody was buying them this time. So I'm going to stop now. I'm not going to buy anymore, and hopefully, my next couple of shows, I'll be able to move what I have left of her, and then wait for the Prism to come out in the fall. I think there may be a surge coming for Angel Reese cards over the next month or two. I picked up a number of those cards really just to take to the Nationals, so I had her in my case. But I might start. I took one out and or actually two out. I put them in the case and I sold both this weekend. And there was a little bit of excitement for her now that the season started. She's in a good position out there in Chicago. They've got a good team. She's getting playing time. She's looking good. So I have a feeling there might be a little surge for her. So I'm excited. I may have to break some of those cards out before the National and drop them in my case, with the Caitlin cards. But we'll just see what happens. We'll see what happens with that. I think there's going to be a lot more excitement by the time July comes with her. But I'll keep an eye on that. The show was really good on so many levels. But one thing I was happy about, right? People who are looking to buy the cards came with reasonable offers. There was a number of times that people made offers on cards that I just accepted it because, as a dealer, I put a price on a card. I know what I'm into the card for, and I know kind of what I want to get for a card. And I know each card. And I'll just numbers, for instance, right? I got a price tag on a card for $100. I really want to get $80, $80 to $85 out of that card, right? And somebody comes up and says, "Will you take 90 for it?" Perfect. Yes, of course I will. I'm not going to negotiate. I'm not going to say, "Well, they're willing to pay 90. Let me go back and see if I can get $5 more out of them." No, why would I do that? Why would I try to squeeze more money out of somebody? Perfect. I mean, I'm getting over what I've already wanted to get it in my mind, or what I was willing to sell it for anyways. And if you would have said 85, I would have sold it at 85, right? So why try to squeeze more money? I was happy to say yes. And some of those people ended up circling back and came back and bought a couple more cars from me and said, "You know what? It's just such an easy deal. I came back and I saw this card and I wanted to make a deal on that too." And I did feel like I look at football. I wasn't looking at all the other prices, but I did feel like a lot of dealers were high on their football card prices. I know I was high on my higher end stuff, but my lower end stuff, my PSA 9 stuff, whatever the comp was, that's what I priced it at, right? Because there's no sense if the comp on it's $45, right? I'll put $50 on it, right? So I'm a couple dollars over, but I'm not going to put $65 or $70 on the card because people are going to pull their phone out and they're going to be like, "Well, the last one sold that." I almost think like there's no need to price my just to price that lower end stuff. I don't know. It just almost seems like a waste of time to go through and price it because everybody's going to pull their phone out anyways and say, "Hey, the last one sold at whatever, can you do this?" And a lot of it was, the last one sold at 55, can you do 50 or can you do 45? And anywhere in that 45, yeah, of course I can. Here, I graded the card. So I mean, I'm into it for a grading fee, and I've got all the tens locked up at home, right? So that's really where the profit's going to come out of those grading submissions. Um, so yeah, I'm happy to do that. And people came with very respectable offers. I mean, there's sometimes people came in, really low, and I'd say, "Look, I can't do that." Like I'd bounce back. I'd be like, "Look, the last comp on this, I can do this on it." But and some people left and came back. Some people bought, and some people left and I never saw them again. But it's okay because, this is how a card show works. Some shout outs, a huge shout out to my neighbors at the show, Gold Seal Cards. They had their whole crew there at the show. These guys and gal were from Canada. Excellent show neighbors. Turns out Nick, one of the guys, is a listener of the podcast, which was kind of cool. And they had a really unique business plan that appeared to be super successful. I planned on talking about what I observed, what they were doing on the episode, but I started thinking, I'm like, you know what? It's better off bringing these guys on, bring them on as a guest and let them explain what they do. I think it's going to make for a great episode. So definitely look for that in the next week or two. I'm going to get these guys on. My man Brian, who came to the show on Sunday, he brought his son with him. I met Brian last year, and I'm pretty sure it was at this show at the Fenway show last year that I met him. We've become friends, and it's always great to see him. He is in the military. Congratulations to him. He's just been promoted to a colonel. And he also was telling me he's been writing some articles for a Beckett publication. So just a huge shout out to him. It's always great to see him. Just a super nice guy. So at the end of the day, right? Fenway Card Show, another successful weekend. I was happy to move some big cards. I was happy to pick up some liquid cards. Getting closer to our football surge, which I'm calling it the football surge. I still think it's coming. I could be wrong, right? A lot of people saying it's not coming this year. But I really think we're going to have a little surge come next month into July. I'm hoping it hits. And then, we've got the national, and I think that surge really gets built up for the national, right? I think people will be buying heavy to load up for the national, right? So hopefully it comes. The excitement is just getting started, right? This is where you're getting into that. We're Memorial Weekend now, right? I don't know, last week was 70 days. So we're in the 60-day range now. We're down to about 2 months away. So we're in the home stretch. The excitement is just getting started. I'll be back Thursday with a brand new episode. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. And if you like what you hear, please definitely subscribe. And most importantly, tell a friend and spread the word. Until next time, take care of yourselves and everyone around you.